Now for real.
This is Steve Downs, the voice of Master Chief, Spartan 117. Welcome to Quality Time, the KO Koala Entertainment Podcast. Anthony and Skylar will take it from here. Master Chief, out.
Hello and welcome to Koalatea Time, the KO Koala Entertainment Podcast. I'm Skylar Sokol.
I'm Anthony Nicolosi.
And what are we doing today, Anthony?
Today we are welcoming the utmost legendary of men, Joe Winter, solo indie developer on Song of Iron, which is coming to Steam and Xbox August 31st. All of you people who are in chat right now, especially, and if you're listening right now, please go to Steam, wishlist the game, and please, if you are a cool person, purchase it as well when it comes out. You would really you'd be my friend, and I'm sure Joe would appreciate it.
I think even if you're not cool, Joe would appreciate if you purchase it.
Yeah,
so.
hey, whatever.
Yes, Joe, welcome, Joe. So we've go ahead and introduce yourself before I talk.
Hey guys, thanks for having me. First of all, it's awesome to be on. It's always fun to talk Song of Iron and games or whatever we're gonna get into. It's always a good time.
Yes.
Yeah, my name is Joe Winter. I'm the creator of Song of Iron. It's a project I've been working on for about 2 years now. But other than that, I've been an animator for 15 years almost in the industry, and I love games and I like making them, and I finally decided to just make my own instead of making other people's, which I had been doing for a long time. So yeah.
That's awesome.
I mean, the very first thing I wanted to ask you was along those lines. For those who somehow don't know, who are listening right now, just because we've shouted it out so much, you hooligans, Joe previously worked at 343 Industries on, for sure, Halo 5. Did you touch Halo 4?
I didn't touch Halo 4. I came in a year and a half before 5 released, and then it was on Infinite for 4 or so years.
Oh shit. Okay.
Basically,
Sweet.
as soon as we moved over, I was there.
I see.
Oh, awesome.
And when did you leave 343?
At the end of the year, like literally December 31st, I think was
2019.
2020.
2020. So just 8 months ago, basically.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's extremely interesting. The first question I had was, how did this start? Did you quit AAA to go to, was Song of Iron something you started after leaving AAA, or was it something you started on the side while working at 343 and then left? I think that answers our question, right?
It started while I was working at 343. Honestly, it was just like I wanted to mess around in Unreal, and I've been making games for so long. I like playing games and making games all kind of blends together, and I was like, I want to mess with this. This is fun. This is a new kind of path of things. And I was making a game that was never going to get finished. It was a big open world shooter or something, and I was just messing around, and I had so much fun but I knew I was never going to be able to do it. And I was like, I need to make something I can actually finish. This is really fun. And so I gave myself a bunch of limitations so that it wouldn't kind of get blown out of proportion. And Song of Iron was born.
I'm guessing one of those limitations was the like locked 2D sort of gameplay.
Yeah,
style,
it was.
right?
Yeah, side scroller was one of them that helped a ton. No multiplayer whatsoever helped a ton, because that's a massive engineering thing. And I am not an engineer. Timeline, like time length, like runtime was set pretty low. Like I was looking at Journey and Inside, which is like hour and a half.
Yeah.
Pretty quick once you've played it a few times, but maybe 3 hours if you're like really being casual about it. So that's kind of where I'm at. A few people have played through the whole way now for Song of Iron, and it's like an hour longer than I expected, which is a wonderful surprise, But and then what was the other stuff? That was about it. It was kind of that core like side scroller, no multiplayer, short.
That's awesome.
And then I just went for it. Yeah.
So overall, I guess my question, because it comes out like literally in a week, right? So
yeah,
how long
tomorrow's the 1 week.
That's amazing. That's so cool. So how long did it take you overall to make the game?
It'll be just over 2 years. I think I started in July of 2019, pretty much. And yeah, so we're like a month and a half past that or whatever.
Right. And I'm very curious too.
Yeah.
So when do you feel like when did you finish it? Like is it finished now? Is this a bad question to ask?
It is gold. It did go gold.
Yeah,
just
I went gold.
right?
Yeah,
I
but that
did
you
go
can still get
gold.
that day zero patch after it goes gold. I mean,
Yeah, exactly. So gold happened. I mean, I announced it Saturday, but I mean, gold. It's like the gold build went through certifications across the platforms like a week ago, but I'm still trying to get one more build through. So like I'm literally working on it all day today.
yeah. So sorry.
What is
ahead.
gold then, right? Like gold basically means like this is a shippable build. Like if it goes out, I'm okay, but I still want to. Everybody knows, right? You can work on something forever if you let yourself keep touching and tweaking little details. So the gold build is doable. A few things I wanted to fix, so I spent the last week trying to touch those up and submitted that one like literally 20 minutes ago or something. And so I'm waiting. Hopefully that goes through. It's all clean and everything's fine. But
That's so interesting.
Is it also the first build that you've had like go through cert all the way?
No, I've gone through clean a few times now.
Okay.
Yeah, it was with like I had done it once for the demo I did in December with the Game Award show, and I was in the festival for that. So I had gone through the cert process with them, and understood how scary it was, and so I went in really early this time, and so I like got one through, and I was like happy. So I waited a few weeks, and then I started doing kind of like a weekly cert.
That's
okay.
Good,
Kind of submission just to be like,
sense.
okay, maybe this one will be good enough. This one, and then I'm like tweaking along the way. Hopefully, I'm not driving them crazy. That'd be the worst thing. But the game's short enough. It's it's not like them trying to test like Assassin's Creed or something.
So,
Cyberpunk.
I'm curious that before we go out, like I know we're gonna wax philosophical. We're gonna get real wide. But before we do that, I just want to ask another Son of Iron question. That's okay, Anthony. Before we
Yeah.
I know if we don't talk about Halo at some point in this podcast, Anthony will never forgive me. So we got to save time for that. So you made the game, you're solo producing the game, right? So how did if it only got finished on Saturday, how did the sort of like release date planning work out with that whole cycle? Like how long ago did you know the release date, and how did you work to finish it for that? Like how was that pressure?
I wish there was an easy answer to it. There really isn't. I mean, for a really long time I was shooting for June. And as I kind of got into the new year, I was like, I don't know, based on my trajectory, I should probably push it out. And then I was going for July, and at some point I realized like, let's just go. Actually, I wanted to do September, like a week later than it is now. And there was just a good lineup with Xbox, so I pulled it one more week back. And it's always like this unknown, especially being the only person, because like if I got sick for 3 days, that's literally just like boom, zero production for 3 days, right? It's not like there's 5 people or 100 people working on it, right. and you just like smooth out that time. Like it literally goes from 100 to 0 in an instant, and so it was scary. And then as I was getting closer and closer, I did kind of keep adjusting, and I was basically in constant communication. I held off announcing an actual day for kind of as long as I could, and then once I was in that, like, okay, the game's kind of done, it's all polished now, minus bugs, I'm fine. We can announce the day, and I can just bowl through whatever I run into at this point, which I announced like a month and a half ahead. I think that was probably the longest ahead I wanted to announce. And just the way things lined up, it was a good time. So
that sounds terrifying.
Right. Well, and I
assume absolutely
Seriously.
Terrifying.
Now, even though you only announced like a release like a month and a half before, your like marketing strategy very much involves showing the game for like a very long time, right? Like you wanted to show the game constantly, it seemed like, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think the first video I posted was in July of 2019. I mean, that's the best way I can market as I look back and I look at that. And maybe I worked on it for like 2 or 3 weeks before that, like at the beginning of July. And then I think I posted the first video at the end. And it's just, part of the journey was like learning and trying to share that. I had a lot of industry experience, but not necessarily like coding and doing all these other parts I didn't do. And so I knew the right questions to ask, but I didn't always know how to do the thing. So it was a really fun kind of process, and it was nice to try to share that with people a little bit. And in the last few months, it's been like way more markety and less discovery. But I hope to get back to the more education stuff too at some point. But
yeah, the animation videos that you've put up
I
over the
love
last
doing
couple of
that.
years, I mean, they are so. As a person who knows nothing about animation, like they are extremely educational, and I think you delivered the content. It's like got great pacing. I don't like. It's not like a fucking like 2-hour video, like of like like it.
Yeah, I mean, there's somebody out there, and anybody who's like trying to make stuff has found them, right? And it's like, oof,
Right.
man, okay, I want to know how to do this one thing, but this video is 12 minutes long. Don't know where that thing is.
Right.
And so at first I was trying to do these like 1 minute videos, and that was a little tough. But those animation ones, I think, ended up being like 3 to 7 or something.
Yeah.
And
They're
it
really
feels like
digestible,
pretty
like five-ish
simple.
minutes. Yeah.
Yeah. I want to get back to that. I think that's super fun. And it'll be great once I move on to the next game and get back into that discovery process to start doing more of that again. But
The one, so we had oh my gosh, I'm Alex Being. I'm like totally spacing his name there for a second. He's an animator at People Can Fly.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. Previously,
And
he
he
worked on
was-
Dauntless before that.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he was talking to us about some animation stuff. He's talking to us about the poses, the importance of the poses. Then I watched one of yours with there's the antic, there's the shit, I don't remember the second one, and then I think the last one is the retract. Like so maybe it's like antic, like delivery or something, and then there's like you're going back on it.
Yeah.
One.
It's the antic, the hit, and then the recovery phase.
Recovery.
That was close.
Damn.
That was close.
Those are, yeah, you had the idea. Yeah, those
But
are
like watching your seeing your silhouettes and then watching you do it. That was cool. That's cool as shit. I mean, even if like for you who are listening right now in chat on stream, if you're listening to this right now on audio, you should know that we live stream these every Monday on Twitch at 8:30 p.m. Eastern. That's who we're talking to right now. But if you're listening, go to the Song of Iron YouTube. Like legitimately, I think it's just entertaining to watch, even if you're just kind of if you're just interested in the general notion of how games are made or whatever. I think you'll find Joe's videos really interesting. You don't need to be an animator expert to like enjoy them. So yeah, they were really cool. And then the watching the guy melee or whatever, I mean, makes sense, but like the animations are so good. I think that's something that comes through in the polish. You're like your artistic, I think composition is the appropriate word here. Like the way you use colors, the way you use, tell me if this is true. I know it's a side scroller, but limited space, right? So like you have a plane where the gameplay is happening, but shit comes from the back plane too. Like it's background, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, minus that you're technically held, like the player's held on the 2D kind of side-scrolling plane. The world is built like an open world, almost 3D game.
Right. There's foreground and background elements.
Foreground, background. Enemies are just hanging out in all 3 spaces, and then they just will come to fight you in your line of fire and all that. And that was just sort of a happy accident in a way. It was like, this is how an environment looks, so I'll just build it the way it looks in real life, and then I'll just run it from there, and it just worked. And then once that happened, it was like, what if I put guys real close to the camera? That'd look cool. It's like, well, all right. And then instantly we're right where the game ended up, and it just kind of it feels so obvious, you know.
I'm an uncultured gamer, okay? Let me to be clear, but it strikes me as very unique. Like I thought it was pretty interesting watching some gameplay videos of how like attacks and different interactions occurred. You leveraging I'm calling it limited space because there's like these planes and there's these movements between them. But anyway, I think it's cool. It's very in combination with your animations. What I want to say is like it just like feels so freaking polished, you know. Like
thank you very much.
So nice.
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, I feel like all of the animations are at like maybe 40%. Like it was one of those things where because like that's my
you mean
thing
like
I'm good
40%
at
of your true potential?
Yeah.
Oh, really? Okay.
Well, it's one of those things where like I can do that quickly. So it's like quickly do the animations and then work on the really hard thing that's hard for me.
Sure.
And given, you know, my hope for like game 2 is way more time on the art and animation side now that I understand this other stuff so much better. And it can go so much further, and I can't wait for that. But I'm glad they come through. Some of the earlier ones are better than that, but
well, you should see us animate.
I literally for the last
I
week
understand.
this last week I literally spent trying to edit a pre-canned animation we already had to like move the left arm slightly to the left, and it was like the hardest thing I've ever done in Unreal Engine. So
It's not that easy.
no,
Yeah,
it's like I'm like the left clavicle. I like just move the arm over. I don't care about like which clavicle I'm moving.
Yeah. Use a layer.
We would have to talk afterwards.
Yeah.
Anyway, not to get too technical, but I am curious. So we have this philosophy, at least with our game development, to try and do everything we can in C++ as much as possible, mostly to try and maintain like replicability and not do a lot of code reuse, which is something that happens a lot with Blueprint. I'm just curious how much, because the game's in Unreal, so I'm just curious how much Blueprint versus code did you use, and what was your philosophy on that?
100% Blueprint.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, that was one of the reasons the game exists at all is Blueprint. I'm an animator. I've scripted before, but I've never coded anything. And I don't even know where that line like gets drawn really, but I don't know. I just hadn't done it basically.
Yeah.
I understood it a little bit, but I could never type code out. It just doesn't work for my brain.
Well,
And so
C++ is like one of the most intimidating programming languages to jump into if you're not familiar with programming.
Yeah, like I've been able to like go sledgehammer through some scripts and like understand something. Like, okay, this kind of says something, and then but C++, like you're saying, it's like, yeah, I don't know what the fuck.
I see.
I do not know what's happening. So I did all Blueprint, and at first I was doing it the worst way, and the longer I spent with it, the more I understood. Like, I didn't know what an array was when I started. I didn't know what like these very simple concepts of code were, and as I learned them, I started using them, and I'm sure I'm using them wrong in a lot of places, but like. It's been a process.
No, well, that's a cool thing about these visual scripting languages is like, we have this conversation because it's so you talked about like how you do the animations first and then you focus on the hard stuff. And for us, it's like the coding part's easy and the fucking like art stuff is like the hardest.
We're like
shit,
our gameplay is so fun. Why does our game still look like crap?
Yeah, we're like, man, this is so good to play, but fuck, can we put an animation in this game? Like I think that is such a cool thing about these visual scripting languages is because we said before, we're software engineers. We work with technical people and other software engineers all the time. We don't have artists at our job, we don't have animators at our job. And and the fact that the engine enables people like that to be able to make a game is super cool, right? And so
it's gonna make the next 5 years and beyond like really cool. I mean, it feels like a lot of the indie scene that's come, and I don't have numbers to back this up, but like we've had such a programmer heavy indie scene for a really long time. Because an artist, the biggest barrier is the code, really, because you can have programmer art, right, if you need to make something, but an animator can't have like artist code, right? That's not a term that exists,
except for now Blueprint it is,
and so I think we're going to see more and more of these like single person or really small studio games, and they're going to keep being better and better. It's really exciting.
I mean, Unreal 5 is going to be crazy. Like, it'll be crazy what games come out of Unreal 5. Yeah,
going to be even more. Yeah, Wukong, that new stuff. That
of course,
Holy shit.
Yeah. I mean, great. I don't think that's a small studio, but
it started when they announced last year. I think it was like 30 people.
Okay,
so it wasn't.
Not huge, but not one person.
I'm sure they've gotten bigger,
right?
Yeah, Unreal. I mean, that's what there's no way the game we want to make that Agora could be what it is if we didn't have Unreal, right? There's no way.
Yeah, I don't think 2-3 person, 1 person teams could even exist without
You know how long it would take me to make a good lighting engine? Just the fucking lighting. It would take forever.
Right.
How long it would take me to make a lighting engine?
Yeah, right, exactly.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, this brings up an interesting question since we're here. what do you think, right? So with the increasing commoditization of technology in the game making space, what's going to differentiate these small studios as the technology continues to empower them, you know?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think, I mean, it's always going to come down to creativity, and in the end, that will always show through. No matter, if everybody can make a game that looks the exact same, or it looks equally good, say,
Right.
the stories, the creativity, the interest, that's still really hard. I mean, a weird example that's like off the top of my head is like books have looked the same forever, but like good authors always rise to the top, right? Like those books, those stories, those things always still like make it, and games will be the exact same way. Um, Being able to do it more efficiently or more people having access to it will only show off more people that have that creativity and that kind of, I don't know, game talent, but it won't let anybody make a game, if that makes sense.
Right.
Yeah. No, yeah, it's going to be interesting when everyone's fucking making Wukong, and like everything looks amazing, and yeah, I think that's exciting. That's exciting a lot.
It's super exciting, yeah. And I think it's like there's the hyper realism is great and it's like flashy, but it's not always the best thing. I mean, like I still like I love Wind Waker as an example, and it's totally the opposite direction. And like there's so much you can get away with those styles, and it's just so cool. And like Unreal will do those things really well also, but that will take creativity because it won't come out of the Megascan asset library. But.
Well, to be honest, it was something. Megascans is like blow your mind awesome. It's so amazing. But it is one thing I thought is like we're all going to have games in these fucking awesome looking deserts, man. Like, the unique art styles are going to be are going to become even maybe greater selling points.
Right. Maybe even from like a AAA perspective, really, I think unique art styles will start mattering more, because I think the indie space is really like already is very much filled with unique art styles, and that's always been like a cornerstone of indie games. But as people in the indie space can make AAA looking games, AAA studios will have to find ways to innovate that aren't just like we have better technology than you.
Yeah, it's gonna be crazy. It's gonna 5 years, it'll be wild. I mean, like the big studios will still be able to out content create indie devs and stuff, right? And we'll start recognizing more and more of like the Megascan library in the indie games, most likely. But indie, full big studios will just go and make their own Megascan libraries. But in the end, it'll start to blur. You'll start to, I don't know, this rock looks like a perfect rock. Great. Move on.
Right.
This all looks like real work. I mean, the UE5 stuff that some people have already captured, like there's this one on, like they're on a shore with the rocks. I don't remember what fidelity with because of nanite and stuff. And I'm like, holy fuck! If you didn't tell me that this was fake, I would like sincerely believe that segment right there was real. It's crazy,
Yeah, it's exciting. Yeah. It's really cool, but it's it'll end up coming down to like gameplay, stories, and it'll finally. Well, I mean, we've been doing it in games for a while, but it'll give more opportunity for more artsy games that aren't just like murder simulators and stuff. Obviously, there's tons more than just that now, but we're just going to get more and more breadth of art and not just art game. You know what I mean? I think that's awesome. Very exciting stuff.
Oh, and holy schmoly, will the man waltz in chat saying he believes the worlds will also get bigger or more complex. Which, for sure. I think where the scene takes like some of the I just retweeted the other day this person in Unity doing this crazy insane procedurally generated like monster with eyeballs where like every time it stepped it generated like 5 new eyeballs on a string from the center of the monster in that direction, so it was like all these eyeballs coming at you, and I was like, holy shit. That, I mean, anyway, that's not necessarily a more complex world, but like,
but it's cool eyeball monster.
I'm excited for these bigger, more complex. I mean, we ask one thing that's been very interesting when we ask our community on Instagram, especially where we have a little larger pool to work with, like what they value in games, what experiences they're looking for in games, et cetera, et cetera. one of the ones on one hand, we'll ask some questions about like, are you looking for what's more important, story or a good story or good multiplayer? And surprisingly, story wins, you know. And then we have like fucking Rocket League and Halo people, multiplayer heavy people, franchises, communities, right?
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah.
And so that surprises
Halo
us. But then
is a story, right? That's what a Halo's all about to me. It's like my Halo is the story.
No, me too.
And then it's multiplayer. Second.
The way I always say is for me, Halo campaigns are the meat and potatoes, and then the multiplayer is the super ass long dessert, kind of thing. But in regarding the bigger, more complex worlds, we ask people like, okay, so then would you when you are looking for a game, are you do you like that a game offers you like hundreds of hours? Like it requires almost hundreds of hours to really get everything it offers out of it, or do you just want a few hours? And they'll be like, yeah, I want a huge like multi-100-hour game. And you're like, you said you like story, and then you like this, So just to say, to Will's point, like as the worlds get larger, more complex, it'll be interesting how they meet the demands of the market, right?
I think a really good example of that, honestly, is Valham. If you guys have played that one, which
people
blew up over the summer. They did such a good job creating this mystery about the world that you discovered along the way. It wasn't just like, it wasn't some story traditionally, but the story that we created along the way, and I was playing with Will, funny enough, the man himself. We created the story along the way, and it was this amazing adventure we went on. And it didn't need them to build the story; they just gave us these like tools to create it for ourselves. And that game's a great example of where we can see stuff going. I mean, it's like super Minecraft in a certain way, and I mean they're in like pre-launch, 0.1 or something, their thing was, and we'll see more of that stuff, and I'm so excited. That game is so good, and I just want more of it.
Okay. I told you I'm super uncultured. With the little bit amount of time I have to play games, I'm always like, I'm going to jump into Halo or Rocket League, and those are my only options.
I feel that right now. I mean, I'm staying away from new stuff. It's like and Rocket League and League of Legends, honestly.
Nice.
My fallbacks right now.
I'm always out here just like comfort. I'm just like jumping into random like 2-hour-long indie games all the time is how I
Skylar's. Thank God we have Skylar.
Speaking of, I saw a beautiful irony in you talking about like games being murder simulators, but also like we want more art in games. And I was thinking about 12 Minutes, which I've been playing recently, which is literally like a murder simulator that's meant to be like art.
Yeah, I can't wait to play all those games. I've got this list of things to hit when I'm done, but my mind can't take it right now.
I got you.
No spoilers, Skylar. Will says in chat.
I've not gotten very far. I couldn't even give you good spoilers, honestly. Yeah. That game is very hard. I'm surprised. I was surprised how difficult. Anyway, speaking of games we like, I am very curious. Like, do you have a top few favorite games? Like maybe your top 5 favorite, top 3, whatever you want to muster. I'm just very curious.
Sure. Yeah. Man, those things are the hardest. I think the ones that always pop to the top of my head, Ocarina of Time. I think it's it's classically one of the best games ever made. Everybody knows it. But that was the first game that I started like overplaying, if that makes sense. And like I would just go, what's in the corner of this polygon? I just like was just crawling through that game, and I was just absorbing this information, and so I could just never forget that game. I could probably draw you pixel per pixel, like maps of it and stuff.
What's the biggest fish you ever caught? Do you remember?
Oh my gosh. I did the thing where you'd go out on the float shoes and then drop with the heavy ones so you could get the really big guy in the middle. I forget the weights, but I not big enough, but it was pretty good, I think.
Never big enough.
Never big enough, right? Shadow of the Colossus is easily one of the best games I've ever played. I mean, that one's right up there. I take a ton of inspiration from that in weird ways, just the way they tell their story without telling a story and world building and stuff. And I'd be lying if I didn't say League of Legends, which is a weird thing, but just the sheer amount of hours they've put into it, it kind of like default has to go on the list. It's such a great sport in a way, and I think those are rare in games that it's so good, so watchable, and yet so playable, and that crosses over really well. Early Halos definitely are in like shooter camp of things that I just love. And then maybe DayZ probably hits that top 5 list, and that's like a weird one. Valheim's probably in there with it because both really good. But DayZ just opened my mind to a different way that games can exist, and very excited for more of those to come out whenever that happens, and people stop making bad versions of it. And start
When
making good
people,
versions
yeah,
of it
I
again.
think battle royales sort of co-opted DayZ, right? And then yeah.
And I loved PUBG in the beginning, and then they lost their way, and it's so unfortunate. It was so good.
I can respect your League of Legends love. I've played Dota since like Warcraft 3, The Frozen Throne, when I was like 13. So I'm a big MOBA fan as well.
Yeah, they're so good. They're such good games, and
so bad.
Anthony's bad at them.
Now, Joe, I have a question. Like, we're kind of talking about the AAA world a little bit. I want to ask you. I have a lot of questions regarding the difference between the two worlds that you have now experienced. Because we often discuss on the podcast that one benefit that we perceive indie studios to have over their AAA counterparts is that they have less creative impediments, which, like, in regards to design especially, which often leads them to landing on like a more novel and pure design. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, totally. I describe it as like the purity of an idea all the time, and like how the less people, the more pure the idea can be maintained. At the AAA studios I've worked at, you have a director who then talks to his directors, and then those directors talk to the producers, and you get this long telephone, and obviously there's like checks to make sure, and the people who should know are coming by and all, but it's so hard for them to keep up with it. Just inevitably you lose something along the way. And
then you get Cyberpunk on PS4, right?
Well, that's like, that's like a technical issue that I'm sure like we heard devs and they were screaming, and that happens too, right? And those people who are above and who don't understand how to make the game but are making decisions don't always believe you when you're because they get used to experts wanting the best thing for their department, but not necessarily seeing it as a whole. And then they stop believing everything we say, and then all of a sudden you have Cyberpunk, right? Which is like the worst version of the catastrophe in a way.
Right. When you have
and then it gets worse with something like Halo, which is a beloved 20-year-old franchise. So if, you could poll 100 people, what's the most important thing and best part of Halo? And you'll get 100 answers, right? And so you're in a studio who's got the pressure of the world on you, and inside the studio you're
just a lot of humans. Yeah, that's going to cause problems.
Yeah.
Yes.
And someone says, we want to make this thing better, right? And I go, well, I know how much I love that part of Halo. We can make it better. And they're like, oh, we didn't mean better like that. We meant like this. You know what I mean? And it's like, and that's totally fine because they have a vision and they're trying to make a coherent vision, but I'm translating it differently because I have all this pre-knowledge and stuff. And like from that perspective, it's a nightmare. And then you start adding overhead to double check. So you have all these production and producers and meetings and blah, blah, blah. And so the time you're making the game slowly lowers, and the time you're talking about making the game slowly increases. And
interesting. Oh, that's really interesting. I can totally like envision that. I mean, I'm kind of one benefit we have of where we work right now is that generally speaking, the teams are actually pretty small. It's like a lot of small teams that ship a lot of products.
This is our full-time software development job.
Yeah, for our full-time software job. Yeah. Right. Yeah, we are not a big team at our game studio. Three. It's us two, and then one more, and we are all part-time.
Nice. Yeah.
As much part-time as possible. So anyway, I can just imagine what some of the like bureaucracy kind of stuff that gets messed up in there that's like slows down the process and all that. Yeah.
And it's all done with good intention, right? That's the thing to like. It sounds so like evil corporation. And
it's hard as fuck to get a lot of humans to do one thing. Like
exactly.
Yes.
And you inevitably have to rely on people to do it. And so, if you don't want to micromanage them, and so it's just this cat and mouse game, and it can be very difficult.
I can tell. Yeah, sure. Okay, thank you for that insight. Because one thing I was wondering what you think, but like as an indie, you have sort of like total creative autonomy, right?
Yeah.
And on one hand, maybe that's really compelling. I can make whatever I want. But on the other hand, maybe that's terrifying because you can make whatever you want, you know? And like we had a small conversation beforehand of like, I still am not sure if people are going to like this thing I'm making, you know? You have you have total creative autonomy. Will anyone like what you're making? I don't know what are some of the pros and cons you see of that like trade-off. You're in a AAA studio, they are telling you exactly what to make almost.
Make this guy's arm move up and down, and you're like, got it, boss.
Yeah, based off of what Alex was telling us from No People Can Fly, it kind of sounded like there are some maybe like animations they throw at him where it was he had autonomy on how to make him, if you will, like freedom on how to do some stuff. But otherwise, it's like I can't remember what he told us. But
even
like a lot
still,
of,
it's like a constrained experience, though. Even in the creative like realm, right? You're just making one small creative decision. Yeah.
Right.
So what's that struggle like for you? Yeah.
Yeah, for the indie side of things, it's terrifying because you don't have anything to check against. I mean, that's why testing's important. It's good to have a chunk of friends who you can send stuff to and bounce it off of. But still, like my day to day, there's no one like sitting here to like just wheel over quick, look at a thing, and confirm or deny what if my idea has any validity to it.
Right.
So there's a total fear factor of like, is this idea clean and good? And you just really have to trust yourself. And part of why I think I've done okay so far is that I just have the experience of the industry. And so I've already made a bunch of mistakes in various ways or seen mistakes made in departments that I'm not necessarily a part of. And so I've tried my best to avoid them or to make a system that doesn't even include that thing. So I can't make a mistake if it doesn't exist. And like multiplayer being one of those things.
Good way.
And it's just terrifying. And I really spent a lot of time actually when things were more fresh and I was having fun playing because it was, not so burnt out on it or whatever, telling myself that this is a good idea. And so the current version of myself, I'm working for, 1 year ago Joe right now, and I'm doing what he said because I can't trust my current opinion on it because I've just played it too much. And so whenever I'm in doubt, I'm like, I decided this was good a year ago, so we're just going with it and we're going to trust that person.
Well, that's interesting. How do you? Okay, because one thing we are really that we try and prioritize are like these regular play tests with like a small group of testers to get some feedback. And holy crap, if you look at the first build of our game we ever put in front of play testers after the third one, which is the most recent one we did, and we're working towards a fourth, whatever, it's like, holy shit, this is so much better. And like, I fear what would have happened if we would have made a whole game around one before getting feedback. You have been posting regularly, and in your videos, you talked about how like the feedback you've gotten from those videos has helped you iterate on some ideas. Is that been posting to social media, posting the game out in the wild? Has that been the main way you've tried to like validate some of old Joe's ideas
or whatever? Yeah,
it was definitely in the beginning. I think some of the earliest posts, just the responses, and I was just kind of surprised how excited people were about it. That just sort of felt like, wow, there's actually something here. Like I've got a core concept that I should flush out because there's interest in the unknown of what I've shown, right? And then I had sent it to friends at one point when it was getting more of like, okay, this is a real game. People can play it. Let's see what they think. And then I had them, they would record the screen and actually talk. And I just had them like speak as like everything they thought as they went through it, just say it out loud. One of my buddies had their younger son play it and do the same thing. And it was just, it's this issue you have where the solution to the puzzle So it's really hard to pretend that you don't. And they will come into an area and go, I have absolutely no clue what to do. And you're like, can't you see that giant blue thing that's with an arrow? And they're like, what's that? I didn't even see that. And you're like, gosh, like you have to trust that no one is seeing it, even though you know, and you've made it so clear to yourself. And so that helps so much when people go and see something for the first time. And a few of those later, I understood what people were seeing, what people weren't, and then I was able to fairly confidently put that stuff through the rest of the game. And then I've had them check again since then, and like to confirm that worked. And I also I've done 2 demos, and those helped immensely. Both just sort of like mass test for bugs is not the best way to do it, but here 20,000 people were playing all of a sudden. Right. And like, hey, cool. Everybody's having this problem or whatever. Okay, right. I'll definitely fix that. People
just through like Steam. That was just like through a playtest build on Steam, or
the first one was this crazy. I was super like not ready for it, but Jeff Keighley tweeted like, "What indie games should I have at the Game Awards show?" And one of my Twitter followers was like, Song of Iron. And then Jeff Keighley messaged me. He's like, can you have a demo ready? And I was like, yeah, sure. It's like 2 months before. And I was like, yeah, man, I can do it. And I just like insert not sleeping for a month while I like got it ready and figured out how to get it onto Xbox for the first time and went through certification, like total madness. But because of that, and Xbox like made a thing about it, and they had a whole page. I was like front page on the store for the thing, and something like 20 something in that realm of numbers, like as many people played it and downloaded it, and then Steam included it in that. And so I just got this monster chunk of feedback from people, and and it was awesome, and it was generally received well, but there was definitely issues, and I've tried to solve them along the way. And then I ran an official closed beta. I invited like 100 people from my Discord community, and they were like, I was like, just go for it. And they played through like 30 times, like the early chunks, and like just ground into bugs, and we're jumping off cliffs they shouldn't have gotten to, and all these like way more buggy, like you should be able to get there. Like, how did you get there? Tell me all about it. And then again, that was the same thing where they only played a little bit more than what the demo was, but like the new demo, and they found so much stuff. I was then able to take that and just look through the rest of the game and play the way that they were playing, understanding that people like moved slower than I did, that constantly they were moving backwards, and I wasn't expecting that. And then that just I then just found all those bugs for the most part. And then the recent Steam Fest or Next Fest that Steam did was like the 3rd version, and it's different bugs every time, but it's less and less severe and so on. And so
that's awesome. Yeah, really cool.
I cannot. I'm like stressed out thinking about how you went about like pouring through that feedback and capturing that.
It's scary. I mean,
you look surprisingly well slept for the amount of work I think you probably have been doing. Like,
I don't need as much anymore. I've ground myself down.
Damn, I hope I can get there. Skylar keeps trying to get me to sleep more. Anyway, so okay, related to that previous question, how important was the creative autonomy freedom in your decision to go indie?
It was a huge part of it. I mean, honestly, part of the thing to even start the project was like, you're always having at these studios, you're always having ideas. You're trying to like pitch them and like, wouldn't it be better if we did it this way? And then when they don't do it, you're like, yeah, I still think it was a better idea.
You're like, it was better to do it that way, but all right, I guess we'll go with your idea.
Disagree and commit or whatever. I'll do it. We'll do it. I mean, I don't know all the parts. It's fine. I just a big part of it was like, are all these concepts and ideas that I think people are misunderstanding actually good ones? And so I wanted to try it and see if I was just barking up a tree this whole time and justifiably being ignored, or if people should listen to me more. And so, insert starting your own project. And it's so much different than any game I've made. And so I'm not like proving someone wrong or anything like that, but it's just like, can I do this? Like, am I on the right path? And then I just love making stuff. And so that was part of it too. So.
So you just mentioned this, like, am I on the right path? you have this video. I encourage anyone who's interested in game development, which apparently is quite a few of you in chat. You guys are all posting your like text games you've been making recently. But anyway, there is this there's a video that Joe posts about like the first year of development, I want to say, and how he got noticed by Xbox, I think is the name of the title. It's Skylar, if one of us will find the link and we'll drop it in the chat. But like, there's a moment where you talk about that for like a month, you didn't do development. And I just finished reading Creativity Inc. It's written by Edwin Catmull. He is the co-founder of Pixar. And it's a fucking phenomenal book, super interesting regarding creative process. But there's this one part where he's talking about like moving through the sort of ambiguity and terrifyingness of really creating anything totally new, and how there's a moment a lot of times in these creative projects where it's kind of like this analogy of a long tunnel, where when you start going through the tunnel, you have the light from behind you. And then when you're close to the end of the tunnel, you're seeing the light at the end, but there's this middle section where it's just pure black, you know, and you can't see behind or in front of you. And about and you know, he talks all about like what it's like for leaders to move through those creative anxieties, if you will, to the end. Yeah. Like, is that what you were feeling that month, or is it a little different?
And how did you get through it too?
That's actually a great way to look at it. I think mine's a little different, but that definitely is like relatable in that, you know, you feel great moving forward for a little bit, and then all of a sudden you're like, okay, it's real. Like, I don't know what the heck, what's going on anymore. For me, it was a little bit more like if you start drawing a picture and you're like, I want to draw a cat, and you draw some eyes, few ears, you're like, that's a cat. And you can either stop there knowing that you did it, but you're never going to show anybody this terrible cat drawing, you know, that you spent 30 minutes or 30 seconds on. But if you wanted to be like a concept artist, you got to go way further, right? Like way, way further. And I think in some ways I got to a point where I was like, yeah, I can draw cats. And I was like, maybe that's enough. And I was really busy. So, you know, it was just hard to do both things, to keep drawing cats, but like... I'll let the analogy die, but
I'm assuming you're kind of talking about that stage where it was Song of Iron was Viking.
It was still, it was still just called early. Viking then.
Yeah.
All it was like kind of this little strip of forest and just running around in it. But like I had gotten some core combat. I was throwing axes at the time. I think I had a cave in there, and I forget how far exactly. But this happened in like September, and I'd only started in July, so it was pretty quickly. I was like, yeah, this is a cool little side scroller. Cool. I think I'm done. I don't know. But I was super busy. I was running a D&D campaign. Work was getting really busy at the time. This is, you know, for Halo and stuff, and just life was busy. So it was just so easy to stop working on this fourth tier thing of importance. Mm-hmm. And once you stop anything like that, it only takes like 2 days, and it's just like poof, it's gone, right? It's out of your mind. Luckily, you know, I had posted my first few posts, so there was this little bit of obligation feeling I had. So like it just like kept prickling in my head a little bit, and it was having such a hard time trying to get back into it. And so I think I talked about it in the video, but I literally gave myself this mission of 1 week
just playing
not even, it was just like literally double click the Unreal button every day this week. Like there was zero obligation past opening the program. And naturally, the second the program's open, you're like, well, you start futzing around and move some trees around and then close it. And then like, just my brain started thinking about it again. And by the end of the week, like it was probably 2 days later. I mean, really, I was just like back into it completely. But it was so hard for that first thing. I was like, just open Unreal. Like it was so hard, which seems silly, but you know, when you don't want to do it, it's hard.
Absolutely. So. No, that's really cool that you were able to find a strategy like that, a technique that worked and actually like brought you back into it, because
yeah. Could you imagine? I mean, I'd be a 3 for 3 still. I mean,
right.
Yeah.
It was okay. So it kind of related to that. Do you feel like when you got your cat drawing, okay, you started drawing your cat, and then you start thinking about like, I'm going to make, when you commit to the idea of I'm going to make that concept artist cat, you know, I'm going to make that good thing. Do you feel like you've been able to see your vision out for Song of Iron to the end, or that like the constraints on you by the reality of shipping this thing solo have somehow like hamstrung the full concept art cat? You know, it's almost there, and you're like, are you satisfied with how far you were able to take it? I think is really the main thing.
Yeah, I think it's a tough one. It's like now that I'm here and I know what I know, I feel like it can be way better. But if I were to show you like myself this 6 or 8 months ago, I would be like, there's no way I'm doing all that stuff. Like,
Right.
and so it's this, it's so easy in retrospect to want to have done more, but that's sort of one of the things I was really good at for all of production was not adding all these unnecessary new ideas. I mean, the story is based on the campaign I was running at the time, or I was part of for D&D, and so I had like a really solid story concept from the very beginning. I basically had kind of figured out a good way to storyboard it. I actually made like a miniature full game in Unreal. It took you it was like a 2-minute run, and you could run through the entire game in Unreal. It was just like these tiny little levels.
To test out the story?
It was more to like map out the story. And
interesting.
I was trying to like write a story, and I was having so much trouble with it. So I started just drawing it. And I drew the arc of a story, which is like have a little bit of an interest and then go up to the climax.
Right, sure.
And that's like literally what the game geography does now. Like you start flat, you have a little like initial, then you go up towards the climax. But it was like this hilarious thing, and I was like, I should just make this in Unreal. And then that just kind of gave me this framework, basically, to make that what could be a long story short. It just gave me this framework to build towards, and I just never diverted from that. I made small adjustments along the way, of course, and you realize this is not working or the scale doesn't work. But again, it was that like you have an idea, trust that person who came up with it, like it is good, and keep going.
I wonder how, man, I wonder how much. I mean, do you think that your experience, I mean, you talked about it a little bit, but your previous experience in the AAA industry and stuff gave you some confidence in old you? Because like, if anything, our playtests have shown me like, damn, old me, I'm so happy new me exists, because old me didn't know shit, like.
Yeah, I think so a lot. I mean, the old me spent a lot of time making sure those things were good, and now that I'm like, hundreds of hours of playing it and making it, it's hard to know how good it feels to swing the axe. And so that old me was a long period of time of testing and confirming and making sure with other people. But there's just, I think a lot of people, have trouble narrowing down their scope. And so they kind of let themselves fork off a lot. I always like my mental image of it is like, you could choose to go in this direction and still branch a million times. But as long as you keep heading in that direction, it's going to make your life simpler. Like if you make a 90-degree turn at any point, then you're just opening yourself up to just like endless additions of things.
Where you're like, oh, I guess maybe I will add multiplayer. And then,
yeah, terrible idea, right? It's like a new tree you're growing off the side and it doesn't work. But, like for me, at some point I was like, I wanted a dragon. Like, do I get the dragon in or not? I was like, I really got to do the dragon, and so I
the dragon's there.
The dragon is in.
I see him in the trailer.
Song of Iron spoilers. You heard it.
He's a nice looking dragon.
She's in the trailer. Yeah. Thank you.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. It's so funny. I come up to Skylar during because we work in the same place, so I see him in real life. I'll walk up to him and I'll be like, I have this idea, and he's like,
Anthony's like, I have an idea for a level for the game.
Game two, like probably 95% of the time, it's like game 2.
Yeah.
Yes, Skylar's gotta hold my in check.
Yeah.
Okay, so I have some questions like surrounding the AAA versus indie life, right? Like,
sure.
What the reality of that. So maybe the first one, what's one thing that's undoubtedly better working in AAA than indie dev?
Well, the one that comes to mind right away is working with people that are not just myself. And I mean, 343, for example, and I mean, most of the places I've worked, I've developed or just really had great friends there. And I'm always in the animation group, and animators I've always gotten along with as one myself. And it's great to joke around, go to Friday lunches when that was a thing, and check your work and talk about it. And it's fun to talk about how to make something better and go through all that. And I really miss that thing. And if everything goes well, hopefully I could get a few people and turn this into like a small studio, not just a one-man studio. And that's probably the thing I miss the most. And of course, resources and it's nice to. There is something nice about focusing on one thing and just making that one thing really good. And because I do most of it here, or like all of it, I get spread out, and so I never get to do what I think is 100%. I never get to like really make this thing perfect. It's always like just good enough, and I move on. And hopefully the whole thing as one thing feels great. And so there's that stuff. It's like I'm proud of this whole thing I've done, but it's hard to point to like a specific thing that's like this is the best thing I did in the game, and if that makes sense.
It's interesting. I didn't think that's what you were going to say. I thought you were going to say like it's nice having a paycheck where, like,
I guess money. Oh yeah, money.
I don't have to like be scared of how my game will do. But yeah. That anyway. That's cool.
That's probably a fair one to put in there. That I try to ignore.
Will in chat says he also misses Friday lunch. By the way.
Yeah. Yes. Oh man, it was good.
I'm curious. Did this is sort of random and topical, but did because I know during COVID, right? I'm assuming 343 moved to a more remote work environment and all of that.
Completely.
Did that play a role in like you sort of shifting to wanting to work on your game more, just because you were like
it was less enjoyable
and around it more, or something like that? Yeah.
I don't. It gave me more opportunity to work on the game, but it wasn't necessarily changing my perspective on it. I mean, like, get rid of your commute both ways, and all of a sudden you have like 2 hours more free time in your day and stuff like that. And it was a thing that very early on I thought was thinking about constantly. And the initial plan lined up with the initial release date of Halo, and it was this great, wonderful, like, finish this and then move on to this thing, and all that kind of went out the window. And,
right.
Yeah, it was just like it picked up so much steam, and I felt pride in it and wanting to do it the right way, but also like I wanted to give the people that were excited about it something that was worthy of that excitement. And yeah, it's this 1,000 cuts sort of situation.
No,
for sure.
Totally, that makes sense. All right, so I got a random one for you, a really random one. That was not a random one. Just a random interlude, a palate cleanser before we move back into the weeds. So my favorite thing to ask any human I meet, and I feel like it's a good way for me to like determine what kind of a person they are, is what your favorite food is and what your favorite animal is. This doesn't have to be a specific dish. It can be like a genre of food or whatever, but it does have to be a specific animal. It can't be a genre of it. No,
a genre of animals. Are there genres?
I don't know.
What is wrong with answering dinosaurs on that one?
Yeah. That's not
if you say dinosaurs, you better have a favorite specific dinosaur.
I like a T-Rex. No, favorite animal, man. I mean, it's probably got to be huskies, because that's the dog I've got, and they're amazing, and he's awesome. So I'll go with huskies for that. That's like an impossible question to know. It depends on the situation. Food, man. If you get one left, Chicago style pizza.
That might be foreshadowing for a later question we'll be asking you on the podcast. But,
it is the finale of questions here.
No, that's tough.
Chicago style pizza. I mean, do you have a favorite Chicago style pizza place?
Lou Malnati's probably.
Lou Malnati's is really good.
Yeah. There was a little one in the hometown that wasn't a chain. It was called like Leonardo's or something. That was the best one, but it's gone.
Are you from Illinois originally?
Yeah, the burbs of Chicago.
Okay. My father's side of the family is all in Illinois. Chicago
awesome.
Area, so I've been there a lot. Yeah. Awesome. Anyway, that's great. Okay, yeah. The verdict is those are good answers.
It's all good.
The only people
I want to know so bad what like bad answers would be.
Bad answers are when people say I don't know and then don't answer.
Oh,
That's
okay.
basically the only bad answer.
You don't have enough of soul to like answer that question.
to
Kind of a
commit to
problem.
something.
Right.
Animals,
Exactly.
I don't care. Food,
Right.
probably this
Whatever.
fine calamari I
Food,
had.
French fries. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. All right, Joe. Now flipping back, you said what was the best part about working in AAA versus indie, but what's the best part of working indie versus AAA? Remote, no commute, you can work in your underwear. Like what would you say?
Oh man, there is something amazing about creation and like discovery and learning, and I do so much of that on the indie side. Making whatever I want is one thing, but like figuring out how to make it is the thing that's the most satisfying about it. Where it's like you get this problem and there's like the internet can help with tutorials, but you've got to kind of figure it out and then make it the thing you actually want it to be. That is the coolest feeling that I think there is. And that's a huge part of why I'm doing this now instead of just animating or whatever. And it's awesome. And then just sharing all that stuff with people, I think is great. And making something that I want to make, it's hard to beat. It's really hard to beat.
Okay, that's dope. I agree. I think it's
It's hard to like describe that feeling, right? But it when you do it, and it's just like, oh my gosh, I figured this out.
We talk a lot about between us the intrinsic motivation factor, the IMF as we call it, and like it is so hard to work our normal jobs when the IMF relative to like the indie studio experience is fucking, it's like 100% over in the game. And then it's like, it feels like zero, full time, just because the things you just said are so like, I don't know. It's so exciting, so, and it's so rewarding to like see progress. Yeah.
And then like at a studio, you don't get to like post everything you work on. People just see the final product. But I post like, here's an idea, and then people give me feedback, or I'll just like, hey, here's a stupid thing I did, and people like to see it, and it's fun to share that kind of experience. And you get a little bit of that missing the coworkers thing by just showing people whatever stupid thing you did or broke or whatever. And but that's part of the experience. It's like this growth. You don't get to share that in AAA, so.
Well, okay. I was subsequently going to ask, what's the worst part of working at AAA? The thing you personally felt like was your least favorite thing.
It's tough. I think the hardest part, it's hard to say it's the worst part because maybe it gives it the wrong connotation, but I think the hardest part is feeling like a big mistake is being made and that you have the answer. And it's not that you always do, but it's like, the way you see it, like it feels like there's this huge mistake, and you feel like you're screaming and no one's listening to you, or like no one believes you or something. And that they all have their own understanding of what's going on, so they're doing their best. But that can be a very big struggle. And that the longer I was in the big studio world, the more and more I was feeling that. Because I had all this back experience of like, no, I've seen this not work before. It's like, please listen to me.
Right.
And that became a pretty big struggle. And I'm wrong more times than I'm right with those things.
Yeah.
Probably, but it's just like it becomes hard. And that's again, I kind of like I was saying, it's like, are my ideas good? Let's go and do and try it out.
Yeah, let's see.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, what's the worst part? What's the hardest part? Your least favorite thing about being indie? In your opinion,
indie is definitely the most stressful version of it, and especially probably my first time through this, where from day to day, especially as I get closer to launch. I mean, I kind of joked maybe a few weeks ago about like, should I just delete this game and like run away? Will that be better than? Would that have will I be safer emotionally than if I were to release this and it to go all horribly wrong? So that is not the best, but. There's sort of like I'm like paying that forward by putting all this stress into this game, and hopefully that gives me sort of the experience and the maturity for follow-up games to like go solo with it, if that makes sense, or like be so affected. Who knows? But that'd be great. And then also there's this side of things that you don't necessarily want to do. We kind of talked about like business side, and I have a lawyer now who like reads all these contracts, and they're terrifying, and I feel like I'm going to commit fraud or someone's going to take all my money or something, like
feel that
there's all of this crazy world that just feels so shady, and it's how it works because it's gives me the shivers because it's like, well, you don't want to like, it's like, what if I release it in this country, did I need to do something?
Right.
Sure.
Is the country gonna sue me? I don't think so. Like no one's, but it's just the stress of the unknown that
Yeah.
most of it's fun when it's discovery, but all the other stuff, it's like, oof, terrifying.
I check the studio mail like every week, and when I go there, every time I'm waiting for the fucking like 40K IRS bill for some shit like I didn't realize,
Seeing a mail addressed to the studio is like, oh, please don't be something bad.
Oh yeah, it's like, oh shit, like I don't even open it on the I have to like wait until I'm okay, emotionally stable at home to be able to open it. Yes, it's stressful. Okay, I have some fun little small Halo questions for you because
let's do it. Welcome to the Halo section of the podcast.
Sure. I like, in 2018, I actually had a resume like all set to go to send to 343 and sort of right before I applied for a software engineer, I think it was like for tools development or something, engineering job. I was like, between my wife and I, we just didn't want to relocate to Washington. And that was the main thing that drove it. Right. But like, shit, Halo is my favorite gaming franchise. It has been since it came out, and it has subsequently had a big part of me not playing anything else, mostly like just really hooked on that thing. So the idea of like your animation reel showing some of the Halo 5 assassinations is like so badass. First of all, I'm trying the backbreaker one. I think the one where you like drop them on your knee. Definitely was rolling with that one for a while. I usually like sweat too hard and I turn assassinations off. But while I was still grinding for them, I had them always on and I was breaking everyone's backs. And that's awesome. Like, love it. How cool is that? Like to like play Halo and like something you made in it,
The assassinations are like one of the top things to work on it for animation. It's just like, this is just like go ham on this animation. It's all your own little world. You can do whatever you want. Just make it awesome and not too gruesome. And
they are awesome.
God, and they're super fun. Yeah. I mean, we went pretty crazy on 5 compared to where the previous ones had gone, but it was super. I mean, it was fun. We just sort of went all in on it. And it is awesome it's this weird thing. It's like anytime you see behind the curtain, you lose a little bit of the magic of a thing, but being able to add to that thing and then see other people have the experience, it sort of all makes up for it. And it is seriously one of the best things. It's hard to explain. I mean, it's just like you're kind of like sacrificing a little bit of yourself and giving it away to people.
Interesting.
To be very like
no, I had a question about that. Like, how did working at 343 impact you, like the way you perceived Halo, like maybe more as a player of Halo from that perspective? I mean, you kind of already answered that, but
yeah, no, I mean, like working on 5, I was still pure fan by the end of it, and like played a ton of 5, played, as much as I could, went through the campaign a few times, all that kind of stuff. It got harder when I moved on to the next one, and it became like a 5-year time working on it versus like a year and a half or so. And you get a little bit more jaded, I guess, because you see all the drummy behind the scenes work and all the tricks and all the fakes and all this kind of stuff. And but it's an awesome experience initially, and then you start to kind of like sacrifice your love for the thing as from a player side to give that out and like put that into the game so that other people can hopefully keep loving the franchise and stuff. And
that's really interesting.
It's not that you don't like it. It's just that you know too much, right? It's
yeah. I mean, I feel like I perceive Halo now more just that we've been doing this. I'm sorry. I feel like I perceive it differently now, just that now that we're doing game development than before, in a way that maybe I could describe to some extent like the magic is lost a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Like, because you know the reality of like a little of what went into making it and where the limitations are maybe or something like that.
I can't help now but be like, oh, that wall texture is kind of, I don't like that. That's not a great wall texture.
You look at it differently.
Yeah, I mean that's like animation for me. Like that's the first thing I notice in anything. So it's just like, ooh, that's not real. Like that looks so bad or whatever. And it's not even that it's bad. It's just that I can really notice it. So now my brain just like whatever is going on over
Right.
here, it's gone. I'm like
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
super focused.
Right.
And that's just games or any sort of entertainment media. I can see that stuff now. But yeah, it's a weird kind of balance to be in. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it makes sense.
Now, I'm curious. I've got a Halo related question. Don't worry, we're
yeah.
staying on theme. You sort of alluded to this earlier, but I'm just curious, like how. I know that the delaying of the Halo game messed up your like personal timeline for sure, but just like how did that feel when that was announced to you guys? I don't know how it was like revealed to you, and I don't know if you can even talk about that, but you don't have to. But just how did it feel for you when that happened? What was it like to have a game you had spent so long working on get delayed? Was it like a relief, or was it like, yeah, how did it feel?
Yeah, it's it's always like mixed emotions. I think you start making plans for your life when you have a thing that's like a 4-year project, and you're like, oh, we're almost done. Regardless of how you feel about the product at the time, you're like, it's almost over or whatever.
Right.
But it was a huge relief because you're in the trenches and and some people don't want to believe it, and so they kind of fight that, and they think it's still going to be okay, and telling them it's not, and or whatever it might be. I know like Cyberpunk, the devs came out and were like, we were telling them and they didn't believe us. I understand that feeling, and sometimes you're wrong because again you want your stuff to be perfect, but it was definitely the right choice. And so regardless of how what you wanted to happen, they made the right choice with that, and you're happy about it because the last thing I wanted was to like have a half-baked thing come out, and then you don't want to, if people hated it, you don't want to be like, hey, I worked on that. And then people are like, yeah, well, you worked on the worst one or whatever, however it ends up being perceived, or like, it's like, 343 at it again, but
Right. No.
so it's the right choice. And in the end, I think when those things happen, it's better. And there's some limit you can have on that, but yeah, I was happy about it. It was like
Awesome.
this needed to happen. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. The last question I had on this front was, now that you've experienced both worlds, you're about to release your solo indie dev game. Like, do you? You've kind of already answered this, but like, do you have any inkling like of wanting to return to AAA? Would you return to AAA, and under like what circumstances? No matter what, you go in indie from here on out, or?
Yeah, I don't think. I mean, colossal failure next week. Potentially, there's no option, and we're going back to AAA.
Sure, right.
But I don't think so. I can't imagine it. I mean, honestly, I'm having so much fun doing a lot of the pieces and putting together my own brainchild and all that stuff that it would be bizarre at the best to like go back and just work on one character animating. It would feel really weird, but so no plans. The version is maybe I'm done running the business, but like I'm some director at a smaller studio or something like that. Like maybe, but that's such a kind of fantasy world that I don't even know what that looks like.
Cool.
But
yeah.
For now, it's all indie, and I've talked about Song of Iron being a trilogy, so I've got plans to move right on to part 2 after this. So
Okay.
Part 2 going to be in UE5.
If I mean, I assume they're ready for it. If there's games kind of being announced, like officially going to be in it. I don't know what their timelines are, but I mean, I assume they're close enough. So
yeah, I think they said early 2022 is like spring of 2022.
Yeah. Unfortunately, we learned the other day that the new builds of Unreal, like 4.27 and beyond, are not compatible with the early release of UE5, though. So if you want to make it, because they like moved past it. So if you want to work in UE5 early release, you're like committed to that one build until the official release comes out.
Looks like UE5's kind of on a branch, now that is not necessarily getting everything they're rolling into UE4.
Oh,
although
that makes sense.
They did say that by the time UE5 is full,
it
will roll.
Almost everything's safe. Okay.
They said all UE4 projects will go to UE5 once it's officially released. Yeah, don't worry. We were worried as well. Yeah.
Well, actually, side note, Joe, is that something you prioritize? Like one thing we've intentionally tried to stay away from is like modifying Unreal Engine so that we can roll with updates, you know?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, I have a few plugins, but not too many. There's one that I'm really excited to get rid of when this is all said and done. That it's like it's working, but it's a mistake, and you got to get out of it. But I won't name it for the sake of
No,
it.
it's yeah,
it's not it's not their
that's
fault. It's just me and not wanting control of things. But yeah, I've tried to keep it pretty slim. As far as that kind of stuff, and a lot of anything I got, it was like more of like I'm gonna break this and figure out how it's working so I can better understand the UE4 system and then make my own version of it or something, assuming it was a blueprint one, and that was like educational stuff. But yeah, I mean UE5, very excited about it. I think it's everything I want in an engine, so I can't wait.
Have you ever? I have a friend who used to be a sound engineer and moved to developing his own game as well. Sort of a similar path to you, but he was in sound. But he showed me the other day his because his whole game is in Blueprint, and like for us,
Awesome.
I've never seen it. I don't look at games that are fully Blueprint, so he like zoomed out in like the main screen, and I saw like the Blueprint web, and I was like, oh my! Have you ever done that in your game? Is it?
No. Mine are all really pretty. Will tell you if he's still in the chat. Like he kind of is like, how do you keep yours so clean? I think I just kind of like figured it out really early, and I'd seen enough Reddit posts of the spaghetti web of Blueprint stuff that I just never let it do that. And I kept organizing, and I understood.
Will vouches for you. He says so tidy in chat. Yes.
And just building references into things so that it could, this could be its own little pockets of blueprints and stuff. And luckily, I never fell into the mess.
Yeah. So do you have like one blueprint where you're like, this is messier, that like the one that like you're like, I could never make this as tiny as I wanted?
The character blueprint is the main player blueprint is monstrous.
I can't imagine.
It's everything.
Yeah.
But even then, it's just like these little folders, basically, of like combat and climbing and this and stuff. But in the end, of course, as I like finished, it's like, how do you stop them from doing this, this, and this? And then you just have this big, branch, and it's like, as long as you're not, are you swimming? Are you doing this? Are you doing this? And then you can go ahead. Which is super dirty, but
hey, you have a game coming out in a week on Xbox and Steam. Hey.
Yeah,
that's awesome. That is like, you just like knowing a little bit with like our experience right now. It's like I sent you a DM about this. It is amazing that you worked in 343 like I gushed before, but the real legendary achievement, Joe, is like that you are pulling off Song of Iron by yourself. Also, like you made some really intelligent marketing decisions, I would say. Like you talk about in your video, making sure your Steam page was up so that nicely when the Reddit post goes viral, there's a place to direct them to. One thing we always like we talk about a lot is that we feel in a lot of ways indie studios are so freaking creative. They're like, they make these amazing things, but marketing's doesn't always seem to be on point there. And there's this GDC talk. I can't remember the organization that does it, but they were showing like this sales charts, and they like one axis was the review score, and the other axis was like marketing dollars spent, and it was like what has a greater effect on sales, and it was marketing dollars spent, right? Like, so
that's cool.
Anyway, like, that you've just like you're killing it, man. The Epic Mega Grant. You explained like persevering on the Epic Mega Grant. Like that is not something that's like easy to do. It wasn't something you got immediate feedback on. It was something you applied to twice. I don't know. The perseverance involved with executing what you executed, I think, is like extremely commendable, super cool.
Thank you.
Which is why, like, whoever is listening to this thing, you have got to wish list Song of Iron. Please check it out. Like, it's on Steam and Xbox.
Correct.
Yes.
Yep.
And yes, oh my gosh, I just totally slapped the shit out of my desk. I'm sorry if that came through. You have got to please check it out. I actually think I'd never play side scrollers, but I'm going to be playing this one. I'm going to be streaming Song of Iron when it comes out. So
That's a common thing I hear. I hope it lives up to all of the non-side scroller, but I'll try it. People's
I play a ton of side
big
scrollers, so we have Anthony and I always
Awesome.
have like we're very on opposite sides when it comes to a lot of things, so we balance each other well. So yeah,
That's
we'll
awesome.
have a diverse opinion range for this kind of thing. I'm curious.
I
have
already
you
like the
announced-
music.
Sorry, go ahead, Anthony.
I just say I already tell you right now. I like the atmosphere of Song of Iron is like awesome. Like I love it, and so I'm gonna even if I suck at the side scrolling and actual gameplay, I do want to throw the axe at that damn big troll guy.
Yeah.
I definitely want to do that.
Throw it at everybody.
And I was trying to pitch Joe on the Drunk Viking add-on, like the DLC, because you got to go to Song of Iron's YouTube. Whoever's listening to this, go to the very first video Joe ever put there. It's like the first initial like ragdoll.
Oh, the one.
animation,
You said you were trying to make like a ragdoll Gang Beast style game instead.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, it was a little sillier. It was a little, I just had this awesome vision of like you swinging an axe and getting stuck in a shield, and then you having this like ragdoll pull it away, and
that's
didn't quite work out. Yeah,
that's reminding me of what's that game, Scholar?
Party Animals,
Beast?
which is like the modern Gang Beasts, basically.
Yeah,
it gives me that damn
that's
Song
a
of
Game Pass game, man.
Song of Iron, Party Animals, collab. I am down.
So I'm curious. And you don't have to answer this if you can't. But because I don't see your price anywhere on Steam, I was just going to ask how you decide if you don't have to tell us what it is if you're not talking about it. But I'm just curious how you decided. Was that a decision you made? Was that a decision you worked with Xbox on? Like how did your pricing sort of come into play?
Yeah. It's going to be $19.99. It's on Xbox. It's going to be the same price.
Okay.
Steam without the pre-order. I guess I could just type it, but there's not there's not like a gonna be price section for Steam.
True.
Or I just haven't.
No, I think you're right. Unless you can pre-order it, you can't see the price until the release.
Yeah, I would have to like say it, which I could. But yeah, that was like one of the hardest decisions because you like go, okay, super AAA games are $60 or $70.
Yeah.
And then and you go, well, if you go by hours, you're never going to compete with like an Assassin's Creed game, right. And then it's just like pure chaos, and the price went up in my mind over time. It was like $5 game when it was going to be half of a quarter of what it is. And then I literally went up in these $5 increments until I talked to Xbox a little bit and I got some advice from them. And they're like, $15 to $20, it doesn't matter. Like you don't see any significant change in the way people respond to that price. So I did the 20, and there's a little bit of sort of like, it's like a one-person tax, I guess I'm putting on it a little bit. It's like, this is custom made for you tax. And it's like
shit. Song of Iron is totally If you would have done it less than 20, I would almost be mad at you. Like
honestly, and I asked I had one of my Reddit posts that was doing well. I just people were asking me for the price, and I just asked them right back, and I said, I'm thinking this, what do you think? And they were all like, that's not enough. Like, we need to respect indies more, which is like totally an amazing conversation for a Reddit post to have. And they were like, this should be $30. And I was like, that sounds like a lot.
That's so funny. Our chat right now, they're all saying, I would pay 60 to 70 for Song of Iron. I'd pay 40.
I don't know if they were listening when we talked about the length, though, because a lot of I will say, we've asked a lot of questions. People are always like all about length when they decide on how much they're willing to pay for a game, which I'm over here saying I would have paid like, $100 for What Remains of Edith Finch or whatever. But
yeah, that's the thing. Like length to some is necessary to some point, right? You don't want 0 hours and pay $60, but yeah, I mean the game's like 3 to 4 hours solid, and there's some reason to play a second time, and part of the shortness is that you can play again and like catch stuff that you missed the first time. There is like things to see that you could miss. It's not just a beat 'em up and then it's over kind of thing. And you pointed out the mood. The mood is a huge part of it. Like there is an experience to be had in Song of Iron that I think goes past just the throwing axes and stuff. And I hope people really enjoy it. It's like, that's the thing that I'm making. It just happens to have combat and all this other stuff in it. But yeah, so that, time kind of goes into play with that thought, and wanting to be successful. And, it's like, if I'm going to sell the smaller number, you have to go for a higher price. And it's the most terrifying thing because it's there's such a weird roadmap for it.
I am so happy from an hour's perspective. I talk about it so much on the podcast, how I want more games that are like 4 hours. Like I can easily kind of play through it on a weekend thing.
Yeah.
I am not, I need to play 100 hours before I like a game kind of a person.
Yeah, those games to me are like you're playing that one for multiple weeks or months, and then in the middle of that, you play a couple little games, and those games stick with you.
Yep.
Inside, which is clearly a huge inspiration. I think Inside, like a clean run through, is like an hour long or something. I mean, it's like, but that game, the experience of the game is so incredible.
Yeah. Limbo as well. Limbo was that for me. Like that was one of the first indie games I ever played, and it made such an impression on me.
Same studio. I mean, they clearly learned from it, and you don't want those games to overstay their welcome either, because there's, like that thing. If you did that for another hour, you'd be like, okay, where are we going?
Right.
And that's fine because sometimes like that makes an experience great. And so, I think there's something really good about that.
So our chat is asking, and once again, if you can't answer this, that's fine. But they're curious if this will be on Game Pass or if there's any plans for that to be a thing.
Game Pass, it's not at launch. That's not up to me necessarily. That's like Game Pass is like an authored library. And so I'm very excited to be on it if they ever give me the call. I totally want to be on it. Absolutely, but not at launch, unfortunately.
I see.
Which maybe works. If I end up getting lucky and being included later, that might be the best of both worlds. Right. Kind of get that second push because I can only shout so loud, and my marketing platform is only so big, and so getting that second wave would be awesome.
Totally, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, so Anthony, I think we are approaching our time for you to ask the question. Big question.
All right, I just want to throw in, my wife is in chat and she says, I can honestly tell you, she's definitely not a like sweaty Halo player. She's much more casual and is in it for the fun, hard, good times. She says, I can honestly tell you that one of the things I was most hyped for when Halo 5 released was the assassinations. I will hide in West Armory for the entirety of a Warzone match just to pull off that sexy-ass assassination.
I love it. That's perfect. Hey. Halo is made for lots of different people. That's a perfect way to play.
Oh, wait. I have to ask. Sorry, before the final.
One more. That's
unfortunately, they said maybe assassinations aren't going to be there in Infinite launch. Are you saddened by that? Are you saddened for the team who does assassinations?
I am very sad for the animators because on 5, we got towards the end and it was like, all right, everybody, here we go, and we did them all together, and it was just like, I'm gonna do this stupid thing, and they're like, yeah, and it was like so fun, and so those are always kind of like the cherry on the top of the project.
I gotcha.
And so we never want to see him gone.
Yeah. That's unfortunate. Yeah, I don't know the way they. I'm not trying to get any details. I'm just saying, like, the way they phrased it is like maybe they would come back. So hopefully, for the animator's sake, hopefully they come back.
Hopefully,
hopefully they come back. All right, Joe. This is the question. This is the question. Okay. I think I already know the answer.
Anthony's favorite question to ask. Yeah.
I think I already know the answer. Yeah. We ask it to all of our guests. If you had to choose. We could have a surprise here, Skylar. You don't know.
I will be very surprised if that's the case.
If you had to choose one of these two foods, the other one never exists. Like, it never existed before. You never got to try it, and it will never exist in the future. Okay?
Okay.
Would you choose pizza or burgers?
So does no burgers mean there's no cows in the world?
That their cows still exist. It's just, but maybe not. They probably wouldn't have been domesticated aggressively.
Our evolutionary.
Are you trying to take like the climate change approach to this question? Because
he's going.
I support that. He's answering pizza because it would reduce global warming because we'd have less cows.
Is that true? I missed that.
Yeah,
is that what you said? There's less cows. Okay. Extra respectable.
This is a good answer.
Extra respectable.
Yeah. This is great.
Joe, Majin Titan says, you are literally my favorite guest, and Andre's backing him up. And Andre's in chat, and he's saying, I will respect that, man. Can't handle that methane. It's funny. Chat's got all kinds of stuff. Andre was talking about before. He's like, shit, I only ever play Rocket League, but ever since I started listening to these podcasts, I've wishlisted Agora and Song of Iron. He's like, I gotta check
Rock
out
on.
this game. Let's go. Right on, Andre. I'm
That's
glad you
awesome.
enjoyed it. Thank you, Joe, so
Yeah.
much for joining us. Again, if you are still listening, please consider supporting Joe and buying straight up. Come on, guys, Song of Iron, and then at least please wish list. It really helps out from an exposure perspective on the Steam store. I'm kind of thinking I want to play it on both, like PC and Xbox. I've got I still have the old like 2013 Sunset Overdrive Xbox. So if you want some feedback on how it runs on the Potato
Nice.
One, you
Oh,
know,
let him
back
know.
here.
Let him know.
I
By the way,
knows. I'm doing my best.
unrelated, not to
Anyway.
distract our conclusion, but I did see a PS5 in person for the first time yesterday.
Wow.
I hadn't seen it in person. That shit is so big. Like, I knew it was big, but oh my God. I think it's taller than my PC.
It's
Wow.
big. It's a big boy.
That's so
It's a big
funny.
one. Anyway,
so
thank you so much, Joe, for coming on. We will be doing everything we can to help support the
Yep.
launch of Song of Iron,
Thank you.
and we wish for the best. We're hyped for Song of Iron 2, 3, and shit,
Or
freaking
whatever it's called.
UE5?
Yeah, I want to
Yeah,
know.
or-
Is
yeah,
it
right.
going to have like a clever, like different musical term as the first word
Yeah.
and then of iron, or go in different elements? Like,
I've got ideas. I've got the names already.
oh
That's
yeah,
interesting.
wow, you already
Actually,
have it. Nice.
we would love to have you back just on a whole
Yeah.
conversation about the marketing reasons for your sequel's name, because I have thought about this so much. I'm like, if we do a 2, do we do Agora 2? We already have some marketing momentum around Agora. Like, do
It'll
we do a 2?
probably, yeah. It's still Song of Iron. It's sort of Song of Iron sub. So it probably ends up being Song of Iron 2 sub. You know what I
Right.
mean?
So yeah,
Right,
But-
right,
I got you.
right.
Gotta
Right
get
on.
that brand recognition. Yep. Okay. Well,
Thank you so much, Joe. For those who are listening on the chat, we are going to be doing giveaways to celebrate this epic thing. Joe, you do not need to stay with us to do that. You have a game
but
to make.
before this happens, we should answer one patron question real quick.
That's true. The patrons, yes.
I got one. I picked one. I think it'll be a fun one for Joe to answer as well. So we'll go with this. We have a Patreon, and people who subscribe can submit questions, and we do one every podcast. So this one's from who is the Jedi Knight guy? What's his actual name? Literal goddamn.
Literal goddamn X-wing. Yeah, that's his Discord handle. That's Dash Dash.
Okay.
That's Dash
Dash's question.
awesome.
I'm skipping Rollick's question. We'll answer it next week because it's not a fun one for Joe. So this question is: should boss fight music be exclusive to the fight, or should it be an epic or remixed version of a previously heard song or theme?
Ooh.
What do you think, Joe?
I think Joe should. Yeah.
It should be the second. I think music can't be one off. You want to weave it all together, and you're telling a story, so you don't want to just have a new thing that has no connection to anything else. So the soundtrack should be a nice flowing story, just like the game should be a nice flowing game, blah, blah, blah. So you want it to all cross over. Song of Iron, for example, has a melody that's basically in every song. We characters have themes, and then they have the fight version of the theme, and blah blah.
Oh, cool.
Kind of stuff.
I will tell you, I agree with you completely, and that's how I feel about music as well. But I watched a really interesting Austin Wintory. I think it was Austin Wintory
He's awesome.
video talking about The Last of Us 2's soundtrack and how they had asked him to do music on it, but he had other things to do, and he talked about that soundtrack because he talked about how The Last of Us 2 went with a completely different approach, not using this themed musical thing, and they have a lot more one-off music and all of that. And he went into a really interesting conversation, even though he has the themed music philosophy as well, about how this other one is so valuable, and it blew my mind about how I think about music for him to be like,
that's cool.
Yo,
I gotta
actually,
check that out.
yeah, it's cool. I have to find it, but yeah, I was in an interview with him. If I find it, I'll shoot you a link.
Yeah, that's awesome. He's great.
Yeah, he's cool. He went to my high school, so that's my claim.
Oh, no way. That's awesome.
I am such a huge fan of emotional equity in music. To rip the term off Marty O'Donnell, who made the Halo soundtracks. It's so powerful. I mean, not only as a narrative, connective tissue, a connective emotional tissue through the game, but like the way those experiences hang with you beyond the game, right? Like when you're
Mhm.
reflecting on the experiences. I've said it before, the part of, and this could easily be the case for Song of Iron, like the part of the Halo universe from a media perspective I engage with most is the soundtracks from an hour's perspective. I have listened to the soundtrack way more than even the thousands of hours I've put into the game over the years, right? And like they just form to you, and kind of they're like this like capsule of a moment when you played it, you know, and everything like that. And when I don't know, I just feel like generally in the games I've played where it is like a theme, a variation on the theme or something like that, it's just been more impactful than when it's been one off. Not to say it could maybe never be good one off or whatever. In fact, I'm thinking like one of my favorite boss fight music examples is Final Fantasy VII, which I do not think, I think it is a one off. I think just like out of nowhere, it's like, you know, but like
That sounds like a Halo one too. Yeah, it's almost like there was like there's this difference too between having like a track that works together and then having like you know, a one-off riff within that thing that's like, this is the thing you remember, this is the melody chunk from this part, but it's all part of this greater system, right? So
okay, well, anyway, thank you, Joe, so much for being on the podcast. Really appreciate it. And yeah, if you ever want to come on again, we'll always have you. We can chat more about food or more about video games.
It would be so cool to hear about post-launch, like your experience.
That would be really cool. Yeah,
like after you sleep finally, you know. And like,
I don't think Joe's gonna sleep. He's gonna start on game 2 right away. I see it. I see how excited he is to go to game 2.
Yeah, maybe a little, but yeah, no, that would be awesome. I mean, it'd be super fun to like go deep into how that all went, and since you guys are working on one, you know, there's some you can relate on that.
Oh shit, I learned so much already. Layers, animation layers,
animation layers. Side note before we leave, someone needs to like super compress my video for this whole thing because my lighting has dynamically shifted as the sun is setting.
I think it's cool.
It looks so cool. I want to see the super fast forwarded version.
Yes, sir.
Time lapse. Anthony will make an Instagram post of it.
Right.
I will. Making a note right now. Like, mine has changed too.
It's almost over, but it's
I noticed great. Both of yours have really changed. I turned my light on a while ago, but yeah, I can see that.
I'm committing to sunlight only.
Okay, Anthony.
Thank you for having me, though, guys. It was super fun. I really appreciated it, and all the pushing has been wonderful. So yeah, hopefully people.
Awesome. We are not done pushing.
Anthony, where can people find us?
The shit out of this thing. You can find us at koalaentertainment.com. There you have links to all of our social media, including, most importantly, our Discord, where you can play an idle game that relates to the universe of Agora, our upcoming game. Oh my gosh, please, if you're listening to this, please wishlist Song of Iron, and please wishlist Agora, our upcoming game. If we can hit 5,000 to 10,000 wishlists, I believe is the magic number, we can get on the popular upcoming Steam page, which would do numbers for helping us try to hit our sales goals so that we can quit our full-time jobs and do this cool thing. You know, like, please help us in our quest.
And if you heard about how the trailer got released through the ARG that was on the Discord, that's still there and it's still running. So if you want to didn't participate in the ARG and want to solve it, you can. And if you have any questions, just hit me up and I'll help you out.
Yeah. For those who are listening, there was an ARG that kind of got launched through this idle game, and gosh, we'll have some content covering that in the future. If you missed out and you want to know what happened, it was a blast with the community, and culminated in the reveal trailer. So fantastic. Thank you everyone for your support. Please again, wishlist and check out Song of Iron August 31st, Steam and Xbox. Thank you guys for listening.